Olá pessoal, no vídeo de hoje vou aqui compartilhar os meus estudos para a certificação AWS Certified Developer Associate. Eu estou fazendo aqui um curso da Udemy e vou aqui compartilhar com vocês os meus estudos desse curso. Então vamos lá?
And welcome to the AWS Certified Developer Associate. And welcome to the AWS Certified Developer Associate course. My name is Introduc, and I will be your instructor. So we're starting in 5 minutes. Let's just go over some prerequisites. So we're going to prepare for the DVSC02 certification. And although it's a sounding certification, I will try to make this course as interesting as possible to cover everything you need to know. And as such, we will cover over 30 AWS services. So we have a lot to learn, but don't worry, we'll go step by step. Even if you're an IT or an AWS beginner, you're welcome, but take your time. It's not a race, and go with me with the hands-on. You don't need to be a developer to pass the developer exam, but it definitely helps you have some coding background. Now, if this is your second AWS certification and you've done the certified solution architects beforehand, try not to skip any lectures. After the 7th section, yes, there are some new content regarding the certified developer exam, but please review the first lectures. It will be always good for you to rehash that basic knowledge. So what's AWS? If you're new to this, this is a cloud provider, and with the AWS, you're able to have services and servers that can be used on demand and scale very easily. This has allowed companies to run a website for millions of people with only 3 or 5 engineers, which is crazy. So AWS has revolutionized IT over time, and now it powers some of the biggest websites in the world that you know of. For example, obviously Amazon.com, but also Netflix. So this course is very complete. We'll be learning all of these things and more, and this may be daunting at first, but don't worry, we'll go step by step. Don't feel afraid, but as you can tell, there's a lot of things we have to learn in this course. So I like to call AWS a spaghetti bowl because it is a complete mess, but we'll try together to navigate through it and together learn all the services we need for you to become an AWS certified developer. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next lecture. So let's go ahead and create an AWS account. For this, on the website of AWS, I'm going to click on Create Account.
Essa é uma questão
Here's my full name,
muito
and then
básica,
I'll just
criar a
enter more
conta da
information.
AWS, ativar a
So
conta da
here you
AWS,
have to
vou
enter.
ativar essas.
So just a quick lecture about CourseFit.
Tem aqui os recursos.
Hi and welcome. My name is Stefan Marek, and I will be your instructor for this course. I'm delighted to have you here. I really hope that you will enjoy this course and that you will go all the way through with it. So this is just a 2-minute introduction so that you get to know me, and then we'll hop right into the course. I'm French, so if you hear a small accent, this is where it comes from. It's the sweet country of France. But I've also lived in the United States, in Australia, and now in Portugal. My expertise is going to be around AWS certifications and Apache Kafka. Why? Well, because in my career,
Os slides
I've
e o
had the
material
chance
do
to be a
curso, vou
data
baixar.
analyst, a big data engineer, a developer, and a solutions architect. Well, obviously, nowadays, I'm a teacher. I love to teach, and this is my passion. And I'm going to help you achieve any goals you have through online learning. So before you get started with this course, there are 2 ways you can connect with me. The first place is on LinkedIn. So this is where I will share some news about AWS and the Kafka ecosystem. This is where I announce new courses, and this is where I congratulate my students.
Isso aqui
So for
é
example,
o
if you've
código.
completed the course or you passed a certification, make a post on LinkedIn and tag me.
São os
and I will make
códigos
sure
que
to
fazem parte
congratulate
desse
you.
curso.
I love to see my students reach their goals. This is my
E o outro
main
download aqui
motivation.
os slides.
The second way is on Instagram. So Instagram is a big project of mine that I've started several years ago. So I love to travel the world, and I dedicate some of my time to actually meet my students. And to date, I've already met over 40 students. So every time I meet students, we'll have a chat about your goals, about how the course helped you in your career, and just general chat about life. And at the end of it, I will make a post on Instagram. So if you want to get the chance to meet me or to read about other student stories, then follow me on Instagram. Finally, before starting this course, I want you to set a goal. By setting a goal, you will have a much higher chance of finishing this course and learning a lot. So maybe you want to finish this course in 3 weeks. That's perfect. This is how you learn, and this is how you will make the most out of this course. And don't hesitate to go through the videos as many times as needed. This is what videos are used for. If necessary, you can speed up the video or slow it down, so it becomes. Now let's look at the history of the AWS cloud. So it was launched in 2002 internally at Amazon.com because they realized that the IT department could be. Now let's look at the history of the AWS cloud. So it was launched in 2002 internally at Amazon.com because they realized that the IT department could be externalized. So their Amazon infrastructure was one of. Now let's look at the history of the AWS cloud. So it was launched in 2002 internally at Amazon.com because they realized that the IT department could be externalized. So their Amazon infrastructure was one of their core strengths, and they said, you know what, maybe we can do IT for someone else, for other people. So they launched their first offering publicly, which was SQS in 2004. In 2006, they expanded their offering and they relaunched with the availability of SQS, S3, and EC2. Don't worry, we'll see all these services in this course. Then they expanded and said, you know what, we don't have to be just in America, we could be in Europe. And then fast forward to today, we have so many applications that used to run or are still running on AWS, such as Dropbox, Netflix, Airbnb, or even the NASA. Now, let's look at where AWS is today. If you look at the Magic Quadrant from Gartner, you can see that AWS is a leader. And it has been the case for many, many years. So AWS now has $90 billion in revenue as of 2023, and it accounts for about 31% of the market in Q1 2024, with Microsoft being second with 25%. It's been a pioneer and a leader of the market for 13 consecutive years and has over 1 million active users. So learning AWS really sets you up for success in the cloud world. So what can you build on AWS? Now let's look at the history of the AWS cloud. So it was launched in 2002 internally at Amazon.com because they realized that the IT department could be externalized. So their Amazon infrastructure was one of their core strengths, and they said, you know what, maybe we can do IT for someone else, for other people. So they launched their first offering publicly, which was SQS in 2004. In 2006, they expanded their offering and they relaunched with the availability of SQS, S3, and EC2. Don't worry, we'll see all these services in this course. Now let's look at the history of the AWS cloud. So it was launched in 2002 internally at Amazon.com because they realized that the IT department could be externalized. So their Amazon infrastructure was one of their core strengths, and they said, you know what, maybe we can do IT for someone else, for other people. So they launched their first offering publicly, which was SQS in 2004. In 2006, they expanded their offering and they relaunched with the availability of SQS, S3, and EC2. Don't worry, we'll see all these services in this course. Then they expanded. Now let's look at the history of the AWS cloud. So it was launched in 2002 internally at Amazon.com because they realized that the IT department could be externalized. So their Amazon infrastructure was one of their core strengths, and they said, you know what, maybe we can do IT for someone else, for other people. So they launched their first offering publicly, which was SQS in 2004. In 2006, they expanded their offering and they relaunched with the availability of SQS, S3, and EC2. Don't worry, we'll see all these services in this course. Then they expanded and said, you know what, we don't have to be just in America, we could be in Europe. And then fast forward to today, we have so many applications that used to run or are still running on AWS, such as Dropbox, Netflix, Airbnb, or even the NASA. Now, let's look at where AWS is today. If you look at the Magic Quadrant from Gartner, you can see that AWS is a leader. And it has been the case for many, many years. So AWS now has $90 billion in revenue as of 2023, and it accounts for about 31% of the market in Q1 2024, with Microsoft being second with 25%. It's been a pioneer and a leader of the market for 13 consecutive years and has over 1 million active users. So learning AWS really sets you up for success in the cloud world. So what can you build on AWS? Well, pretty much everything. AWS will enable you to build sophisticated and scalable applications, and they are applicable to a diverse set of industries. Every company has a use case for the cloud. So Netflix, McDonald's, 21st Century Fox, Activision, they're all using the cloud. And use cases can include just transferring your enterprise IT, or using the cloud as a backup and storage, or doing some big data analytics. You can also host a website or create a backend for your mobile and your social applications. Or you can have your entire gaming servers running on cloud. The applications are endless. Now, AWS is global, and this is where we're going to learn a bit more specifics about how it works. So we have AWS regions, we have availability zones, data centers, edge locations, and points of presence. And all of these can be represented on the map right here. So let's go on this website to have a quick look at it. So this is a cool map because on this website, you can see how AWS is global. So if I click on it, I can scroll the world and see what is happening. So we can see that AWS has multiple regions and they're in orange and they're all around the world. For example, Paris, in Spain, in Ohio, in Sao Paulo, Cape Town, Mumbai, and everywhere else. So AWS truly is a global service. On top of it, each region are going to be connected through the network. So these are the network reconnecting the regions, and this is a private network of AWS. And then within each region, for example, if I really scroll into the Cape Town region, we can see that we have blue dots, and each blue dots will be availability zones that we'll be describing in the next slide. So as we can see, what I want to get you out of this is that AWS truly is global, and we can leverage the infrastructure of the cloud provider to make ourselves, our application, global. The first important concept in AWS are regions. So regions are all around the world, and we saw it on the map from before. The regions have a name. It could be US East 1, EU West 3, and we can see the mapping of the name of the region to their code on the console that we'll see in a minute. Now, a region, what is in it truly? Well, it's going to be a cluster of data centers, so many different data centers located near, for example, Ohio, or Singapore, or Sydney, or Tokyo. When we use AWS services, most services are going to be linked and scoped to a specific region. That means that if we use a service in one region and we try to use it in another region, it will be like a new time of using the service. Now, a question that may come up in the exam is how do you choose an AWS region? So say you're launching a new application, where should you do it? Should you do it in America, in Europe, in South America, or in Australia? Well, the answer is, of course, it depends. But let's look at some factors that may impact your choice of an AWS region. The first one is compliance. So sometimes governments want the data to be local to the country you're deploying the application in. For example, data in France may have to stay in France, and therefore you should launch your application in the French region. Then there is also a concept of latency. So if most of your users are going to be in America, it makes a lot of sense to deploy your application in America close to your users because they will have a reduced latency. If you deploy your application in Australia and your users are in America, they will have a lot of lag using your application. Then also, not all regions have all services. Okay, some regions do not have services, and so obviously if you're leveraging a service with your application, you need to make sure that the region you're deploying into is available and does have that service. And finally, pricing. So pricing does vary from region to region, and you need to consult the services pricing pages to see what the differences are between the regions, but this could be obviously a factor that could impact your deployment of an application into a specific region. Now, availability zones are what actually are going into the region. So each region will have many availability zones, usually 3. The minimum is 3 and the max is 6, but really the usual is 3. So let's take the Sydney region as an example. The Sydney region code is AP Southeast 2. So we have 3 availability zones in Sydney, AP Southeast 2A, AP Southeast 2B, and AP Southeast 2C. Now, each of these availability zones are going to be one or more discrete data centers that will have redundant power, networking, and connectivity. That means that in Southeast 2A, I can have 2 data centers, maybe as well 2 in 2B and 2 in 2C. But it could be 1, it could be 3, it could be 4, we don't really know. It doesn't tell us that. But what we know is that these availability zones are separate from each other so that it will be isolated from disasters. So if something happens to AP Southeast 2A, we know that it is designed not to cascade into AP Southeast 2B or AP Southeast 2C. So they're really isolated from disasters. And then these data centers, these availability zones, they are connected with high bandwidth, ultra low latency networking, and therefore, all together being linked together, it will form a region. Okay, next, the only thing we need to know about AWS for the global infrastructure is the points of presence or edge locations. We will see them in details in the global section of this course, but you should know that AWS has more than 400 points of presence in 90 cities across 40 countries, and this will be very helpful when we deliver content to the end users with the lowest latency possible. And this is what you see on this map. Now, again, I'm going quickly over this because we'll see this at about the middle of this course. So now, how about we just play around and do a tour of the console? We'll see that AWS has global services such as IAM, Route 53, CloudFront, and WAF, but we'll see that also most AWS services are going to be region scoped, such as Amazon EC2, Elastic Beanstalk, Lambda, and Recognition. Finally, to know if a service is available in your region, there is a region table you should check out right here. Category, for example, for compute, you will have all these services and so on. But don't worry, over time we will learn these services and we don't have to navigate the page. Another thing I really like is the search bar. So you can actually type a service, for example, Route 53, and then it gives you search results. So it gives you 4 services that match this query, okay? And then within these services, we can also have a look at features, and 13 features match them. So we can directly jump into the domain names of the Route 53 service, and it's a good thing. We can also look at blogs, knowledge articles, documentations, and so on. So this is quite cool. Let's go into Route 53 now to have a look at this console. So this one is very special because on the top right-hand side, it says global. That means that this console does not require a region selection, and that is more the exception than the rule. But some services in AWS are what's called global services, and no matter where you are, you're going to get the same view. But if you switch services and you go, for example, to the EC2 service, this time on the top right hand side, as you can see, it says Ireland because that shows the Ireland region. And so based if I run this console in Ireland or say in another region, for example, in Canada, well, my view is going to be different in terms of the resources that I will see. So that's why it's important for you to remain within the same region for the entire duration of this tutorial and this course. The other thing you can look at is called the AWS Global Infrastructure that you can find on Google. And this gives you a lot of information around your services. And one thing that is very important to look at is the AWS regional services. And it gives you the services list by region. And so this is the table. And so for example, if in the course I talk about a service and do a hands-on, but it doesn't seem to be in your region, you can check here and find the availability of services. So for example, we can have a look for Cape Town and see the services that are available in this region. And if you don't see a service, maybe you need to switch a region in, of course, the console to have access to it because not all the services from AWS are in every region. So that's it for this lecture. I hope you liked it, and I will see you in the next lecture. Welcome to the first deep dive on an AWS service. The first one is called IAM. So IAM stands for Identity and Access Management Global Service because in IAM, we are going to create our users and assign them to group. So we've already used IAM without knowing. When we created welcome to the first deep dive on an AWS service, the first one is called IAM. So IAM stands for Identity and Access Management. It is a global service because in IAM, we are going to create our users and assign them to group. So we've already used IAM without knowing. When we created an account, we created a root account. And it's been created by default. This is the root user of our account. And the only thing you should use it for is to set up your account as we'll do it right now. But then you shouldn't use that account anymore or even share it. What you should be doing instead is create users. So you will create users in IAM, and one user represents one person within your organization. And the users can be grouped together if it makes sense. So let's take an example. We have an organization with 6 people. You have Alice, Bob, Charles, David, Edward, and Fred. So all these people are in your organization. Now Alice, Bob, and Charles, they work together. They're all developers. So we're going to create a group called the group developers, regrouping Alice, Bob, and Charles. And it turns out that David and Edward also work together. So we're going to create an operations group. Now we have 2 groups within IAM. Now groups can only contain users, not other groups. So this is something very important to understand. Groups only contain users. Now some users don't have to belong to a group. For example, Fred right here is alone. He does not correspond to any group. That is not best practice, but it is something you can do in AWS. And also, a user can belong to multiple groups. That means that, for example, if you know that Charles and David work together and they're part of your audit team, you can create a third group with Charles and David. And as you can see now, in this example, Charles and David are part of 2 different groups. So this is the possible configurations for IAM. So why do we create users and why do we create groups? Well, because we want to allow them to use our AWS accounts, and to allow them to do so, we have to give them permissions. So users and groups can be assigned what's called a JSON document, actually right now what it means, called a policy, an IAM policy. So it looks just like this. So you don't have to be a programmer. This is not programming. This is just describing in, I think, plain English, what a user is allowed to do or what a group and all the users within that group are allowed to do. So in this example, we can see that we allow people to use the EC2 service and do describe on it, to use the Elastic Load Balancing service and do describe on it, and to use CloudWatch. Now we'll see what EC2, Elastic Load Balancing, and CloudWatch mean, but through this JSON document that looks just like this, we are allowing our users to use some services in AWS. So these policies will help us define permissions of our users. And so in AWS, you don't allow everyone to do everything. That would be catastrophic because a new user could basically launch so many services and it will cost you a lot of money, or it would be fine for security. So in AWS, you apply a principle called the least privilege principle. So you don't give more permissions than a user needs. Okay, so if a user just needs access to 3 services, you just create a permission for that user. So now we have seen overview IAM. Let's go in the next lecture to practice creating users and groups. So let's go ahead and practice using the IAM service to create users in AWS. So in the search bar, I just type IAM and I go into the IAM console. So upon arriving on the IAM dashboard, we have some security recommendations that we can, for now, not care about. And what I want to draw your attention to is that on the left-hand side, we go to users. So this is where we're going to create users for IAM. But first, let's notice something. If you go to the top right corner and click on global, you can see that the region selection is not active. That means that IAM as an entire service is a global service, and therefore there's no region to be selected. When you create a user in IAM, it will be available everywhere. But some other consoles we'll see in this course will be region specific. So just something to notice. Okay, so now we have users. And why do we create users? Well, we create users because right now we are using what's called the root user. So if you click on this, you see there's just the account ID available to you. So when you have it, that means you're using the root account, and it's not best practice to use the root account. So therefore, we want to create users, such as admin users, that will allow us to use our account more safely. So for this, let's go ahead and create a user, and I will provide a username, for example, Stefan. So of course, I want to provide myself access to the management console. So I'm going.
Então, aqui nesse segmento, eu passei toda a parte de introdução do curso para certificação AWS Certified Developer Associate, a introdução desse curso aqui da Udemy de preparação para certificação. Na continuação desse, eu vou prosseguir para o IAM AWS CLI e depois para Amazon AWS EC2 Fundamentos, EC2 Instant Storage, AWS Fundamentos, Elastic Load Balancer, Autoscale Group, RDS, Aurora, Elasticache, Route 53, VPC Fundamentals, Amazon S3, CLI, SDK, IAM Roles e Policies, Advanced Amazon S3, S3 Security, CloudFront, SS, SR, Fargate, Docker, Elastic Beanstalk, CloudFormation e por aí vai.